Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of the Buddy Study Group for Worksite Solutions. And today's session is Ask Me Anything. Ask me anything about group long-term care. And Mark and I have been talking, and we want this study group to kind of revolve a little bit more around what you guys not only want to learn about group long-term care, but if you're currently going through a case, just like we did with Brian Gordon recently on the study group. We'd love to kind of help you through that live. So I think with the study group, we see a bit of a vision of kind of an office hours sort of setup for this. So today we just kind of want to give you guys the opportunity to ask us any questions about long-term care. There are absolutely no silly questions when it comes to group long-term care. Whether you're new, whether you've got some experience in this market, we learn something new every single day. So we come from, the perspective that we can't ask any silly questions because there's always something to know. So definitely feel free to do that. Mark, I know you wanted to kind of kick it off with a little bit of an update or introduction for some on the BuddyINS Allstate offer. So if you
Mhm.
want to start with that, we can give people some time to drop some questions in the chat, and we're happy to go over them when we're done here.
Yeah. It kind of occurred to us a while ago that it's hard to offer group long-term care until you've actually experienced it, especially if you've been in the individual market and you haven't really implemented even benefits before. It definitely is a little bit of a uncomfortable learning curve, different lingo, etc. It's probably the best way to learn how to sell group long-term care is to buy group long-term care. So we've been working closely with Allstate, and one thing we asked them to do is allow us to offer group benefit for Buddy, for our employees, for Jason here, for example, because we need to own it. And then I said, hey, how would we be able to extend this offer to our agency and agent partners? Because now, as you guys may know, Allstate lets you go down to 3 lives, so they're not that concerned about small group sizes. But we want to have like kind of a common underwriting offer, a common enrollment process, billing, etc. And they said, we think we can do that for you. I was like, oh, that's interesting. So we're still finalizing the details, but it's looking very likely we'll get a proposal. So we'll start with like an initial group. And what that will look like is you will have access for yourself and for your employees to our California All-State offer. I say California because many of you know Allstate has 5% compound inflation in California. So it'll be situs in California, but of course the benefits you can use anywhere. And it doesn't matter, where you reside, right? It's based on the situs state with the group policies. And we're going to try to encourage employer funding, which is of course what we always talk about. So we would say buy at least a base plan for yourself and for your employees. Not an expensive cost to do that. We'll help you, with the group quick quote, get an idea of what it costs. If you have a larger number of employees, just send us your census and we'll run it through our census analysis for you as well. And then if you're interested in moving forward, we would do a pretty easy implementation in the sense that we'll probably do a ACH billing for all the employees. So they'll start off by paying for it directly. And then you can reimburse them. That's how you pay for it through a bonus. Okay, so if they stay with you, like say through the end of the year, you can bonus them in the amount and we'll give you kind of a list bill so you can see how much your employees paid for. So a really quick, easy way to get long-term care for yourself, for your employees. You don't even have to get a separate offer. It will be through our group offer, and they'll consider you an eligible employee through the BuddyINS group. Now, the one stipulation is that in order to determine who's eligible, Allstate's most comfortable that you get contracted with us, so they can say that you're an affiliate of ours through our hierarchy. If you do have a contract already, again, we always try to respect your relationships. I believe you can get dual contracted as well for that purpose of getting that offer as well. And if you are a BGA and you want to get your agents to offer as well, as long as they're in your downline, they would be considered to be part of an eligible group that can participate. So we're still, I'll call it fine tuning some of the details here. We'll get you some more details on the exact terms, but that'll be a great way to experience the enrollment process, et cetera. through Buddy. And by me answer a lot of questions we're going to get on the Ask Me Anything call today.
Yeah, I can't believe my employer of choice is going to be purchasing me long-term care. What a special day. My first long-term care experience actually at 33 years old. So definitely an exciting time, and I'm sure we'll have a full-blown study group session around the offer when it's official. And being a part of those meetings, it's a lot of hammering nails and reading contracts, trying to get things figured out so we can get the best offer possible, but all in a positive direction there. So definitely keep your eyes peeled and definitely get your questions ready in the chat. I know we have one from David here. What are the key reasons a company should implement a group long-term care plan? It's such a basic, but it's very important question. If you don't go into a meeting
Mhm.
having some sort of answer to that question, you might be fried, especially if you're speaking to a skeptical group or a group that may need to have their eyes open to the opportunity, right? What
Mhm.
would you say to that, Mark?
Well, I'm going to use ourselves as an example now. Say, well, the key reason we're offering it is because we're advocates for long-term care. We're in this industry. We need to be able to tell our clients that we own this too, right? That's a big reason. And along those lines, a lot of reasons we see groups implementing it are the same. They're in the home care world. So we actually work with a lot of home care franchises. Well, if they're not offering long-term care for their employees and they're in the business of providing long-term care, it's hard to have that mission, and not have those options. We work with social worker groups, right, where the employer wanted to pay for a base plan because it's hard for them to attract and retain social workers. It's a tough job. They're not highly paid. Um, a lot of female social workers, and this benefit really resonates with them. So, I mean, there's a whole host of reasons, but just to give you a couple examples, just personal here, those are a few examples. But you'll typically hear attract and retain, but you have to kind of drill that down deeper into that company's business. How is this going to help them attract and retain? So I think that's what makes that story credible.
Yeah. I think also just the general idea of being able to tell the long-term care story really well. If you do that with individuals all the time, you can kind of open people's eyes to the idea that not only extended care events are out there, they happen at any age, but just understanding that there's protection for it in the first place may make companies who have that culture of, I want to provide great benefits for my employees because I care about my employees. I want to look out for them in certain situations, however I can through the offering of these benefits. Like, you don't have to come up with this bullseye reason for a group to have to offer long-term care. I would say, in many ways, sticking to what you're so good at, talking to individuals about long-term care can really help you make a compelling case for why would you own it. And it's a unique benefit, right? So again, that kind of cultural standpoint, um, they have a culture of offering, really good benefits or unique benefits. As of right now, it's getting more popular by the very second, but this is a chance to offer a unique benefit that not many other companies are offering. So if you're competing in a certain industry for certain talented employees, that can be a difference maker.
Howard?
Howard, do you have something to add?
Yes, I've been an emergency medical technician now for 40 years and counting, and I worked full time on an ambulance for 3 years. I can tell you we are all a traffic accident away from needing a long-term care situation. That's what it comes down to. It's not heart attacks, although we are now seeing those in 30 years old. It could be something like MS that hits people in their 40s, in their 30s and 40s. It could be something like Lou Gehrig's disease that can happen when you're 40 years old into your 50s. There are all kinds of diseases that make people who otherwise are in very good health need a long-term care situation.
Yeah, yeah, thank you for that, Howard. It's very true. And beyond that, it beyond just kind of having the general long-term care conversation and talking about, nobody's immune to anything out there in the world. I think just having that conversation of having access to a long-term care specialist. I talked about this on my presentation around the self-funding objection that I did on the individual study group a couple of weeks ago. Yes, I had all these compelling reasons why insurance is a good deal and how to handle that conversation and so on and so forth. But one of the biggest reasons is actually a reason that you can offer to anybody you're talking to about long-term care, and that's access to long-term care specialists who have connections to a network of professionals who are tangential to what you do. So, like home care agencies, like Mark said, companies like T-Care that help care for current caregivers. There's all sorts of problems you can solve around the long-term care issue that aren't just insurance related and don't just help somebody in a future claim, that help somebody now. Even folks like like Esther and the advocacy work she does for making homes more livable for aging in place. All of these connected services will mean something to somebody at some point, and to have a connection to that person is nothing to sneeze at either. Let's see. Steve asks, what are the tax benefits for a company for employer funding? Mark, this is a good one, and it's going to vary by product type. Uh, you know, Traditional long-term care is obviously one of the first that people think about when they think about tax benefits for long-term care, or, your Nationwide Care Matters or other similar products that have separately identifiable long-term care premiums. Those will probably have to wait until a short time into the future, but as far as group life with long-term care riders, what do you see there for the
Yeah.
conversation?
Well, first thing I want to point out, it's a great question, but a lot of times it takes the client off of where they're really trying to buy this. So I wouldn't lead with it as much as I'd use this to help like solidify, the sale. So the leverage of the products is more important. The planning, caregiving, all of those things are going to be the main reasons employers are going to do this. But for group long-term care, the hybrids today, primarily there are no tax advantages for the employer funding it. Usually they're using post-tax dollars. Um, there are some niches when you use group term life, and we know a lot of our carriers are term to age 100 or 121. Then the term life has some tax benefits for employer funding, either up to 50,000 or above 50,000. Both have some potential tax advantages there. But probably the biggest thing you're really thinking about is, do I want to list bill the employer funding post-tax, or do I want to direct bill the employees and do the bonus like we were talking about for the buddy program? Because if you do it as a bonus, then it's tax deductible, right? It's compensation for the employer. And then it would become taxable income to the employee. But it's a very small amount of taxable income, so it's not really going to be a huge negative there. It's like they're getting a bonus, right? And the benefits are tax-free on both the life and the long-term care side. So you still have that tax advantage of tax-free benefits. But in general, these are not plans where you'll say, you'll lead into it and say you're getting, tax deduction and tax-free benefits. Generally speaking, in this market right now, that's not what the carriers have designed their products to do. Maybe in the future we'll see more of that though.
I think we may. I
Uh,
think we've never had a question if something will come through the door that's completely different and differentiated from anything else out there. And I think we both anticipate that there will be a traditional carrier in the group long-term care market at some point over the next 12 to 24 months.
yeah, that will become a factor when you have those products, and that'll be a niche and a sweet spot, when you have those clients that really want that tax deduction.
Yep.
Mark,
Yeah.
when you're trying to talk to a prospective HR person, what I'm looking for is more, what is the problem? They're going to identify the problem. They have parents and grandparents who are needing help, and they're leaving work. They're not, they're coming in late, they're going early, that type of thing. So they see that problem, but that we don't address that really very well.
Mm-hmm.
What we're really doing is trying to show the awareness. This is something that could happen to you, but from an employer point of view, what's the benefit for them? What I was thinking, and you correct me if I'm wrong, is the key benefit would be like executives who they get something for their spouse as well as themselves. And that way, if the spouse has a problem, they can continue working past 65, which many
Mhm.
of them do because they don't want to quit work. I mean,
Yeah.
they're enjoying what they do.
Yeah,
And
that's
now they have someone to take care of mom or their spouse. So
yeah,
that's,
let me address your question, David. The first comment is a really good one. Can I help my parents right now? And obviously, the insurance can't help the parents. However, this is a big deal to HR, and I brought this up in many of the conversations, and it was very well received. We do a lot of education around long-term care, not just insurance, but around long-term care and what the value of professional care is. So, what the employees do get is they do get a roadmap when they're attending the education that they should be getting professional care, even if it's paid out of pocket. There's no reason people should be paying $35, $40 an hour to get the help that they need to help them today. It's just because we're selling an insurance product doesn't mean that that message and that education and linking them to a provider, like an Amada Senior Care is the one I would give an example, isn't going to help those employees today. So you're correct, David. But again, because of our message being more broad and holistic than insurance, I think it addresses that. And Jason's kind of showing on the portal where you can access, our community partners because they can be a great way to, again, be seen more of a holistic long-term care solution provider, not just a long-term care insurance broker.
Yeah, and even companies like T-Care, David, can have the ability to, as a value add, kind of bootstrap themselves to a long-term care enrollment. And their mission is kind of exactly what you're looking for, is essentially, I need something for the now. I have employees that are taking care of parents or grandparents in extended care event and missing work or showing up late and leaving early because of their caregiving. And of course, lost productivity is a huge thing on the mind of HR and employer groups in general. So T-Care can really help with kind of a combo of high tech and high touch solutions to get to know that caregiver personally and recommend resources and recommend free resources where available. So a lot of the questionnaires and kind of the intake and concierge service they do is designed to kind of meet that burnt out caregiver with their correct solution. And those solutions can be really wide ranging. Like we've heard case studies from T-Care. This person just needed a new mattress. This person needed marriage therapy because of the strain caregiving was putting on their marriage. They were, for mental health reasons and otherwise, missing a lot of work because of that or missing productivity. But it also could be, hooking that caregiver up with meal delivery services, things of that nature. And that kind of harkens back to the answer I gave about why should a company implement long-term care, access to experts like you who have connections to experts like them can help in the now just as much as they can help in the future with an insurance plan. But to expand on that too, Mark, yeah, generally we do 2 webinars per group, depending on kind of what their wishes and orders are. That webinar one is really that education that Mark is talking about, where we are going through what is it like to develop and have a long-term care plan, and what are the pillars of that long-term care plan? Because insurance is one of the bullet points, but it's certainly not the only. We talk about even though it's limited, what kind of government assistance is available for long-term care? We talk about family caregiving because for some, that's going to be a very realistic option in whole or in part, right? We talk about self-funding because that is a long-term care planning strategy, is earmarking a financial vehicle for long-term care, whether it's complemented by insurance or not. So that kind of well-rounded planning advocacy talk really helps people in the now who are going through it as well, just to know what options are out there for them and how other people are planning.
so when you're talking to them, you're just saying, okay, we have other resources for existing problem, but the awareness of the problem, as you see the baby boomers age and the parents and grandparents, then your employees are going to be more aware that they need to do something. Like you quoted some really interesting stuff on your website, but I didn't see a source. One of them, for example, approximately 50% of the workforce is now providing care for aging family members, up from 23% 4 years ago. But there's no reference to time when that was and what the source for that information was. Do you have that? Is that something we could acquire?
Yeah, we have to ask Gretchen. She's out of the office this week, but I'm sure we can give you a source for that too.
Super. Okay.
Yeah, so I think we don't necessarily lead with solutions like T-Care, but it's something where you can have that in your back pocket, especially if you're hearing about it from, an HR director or any sort of HR rep that you're meeting with who voices that as a very serious concern. You've got something like that sitting there to be able to explore and add.
What I'm especially looking for, though, is what are the key reasons an employer should do this for the existing employees, not just to take care of, their
Mhm.
parents or grandparents, but
Sure.
on existing. Why should they do it if they got 45 to 55-year-old people working for them,
Right. I think I would also ask, what other benefits do they offer?
right?
So the question is, why do they offer life insurance? Why are they offering disability insurance? I think you're going to find the same answer for the long-term care. It's just missing because we haven't had group long-term care products that have fit the same type of, product they were looking for, like they got in the life and the disability side.
Would it be true to say that a lot of times this has not been a product available because up until recently you haven't had guaranteed issue? So I
That is a
remember
big,
doing group
big factor.
programs and it was a
Yep.
pain in the butt. I did some 15 years ago and we did a bunch, but you had so many declines, you had a lot of time consuming and nobody wanted to do it. So that
Right.
seems to me to be the biggest change currently.
That is true. And I think that's true of the entire market, including the individual market. The biggest challenge is it's not easy enough to get the solution that you want when you want it. And the group side, again, the guaranteed issue went away about 15 years ago and it's come back in the last couple of years. And that has opened up the door because if it's too much friction, not just for the broker, but also for HR, they don't want that hassle, right?
Hmm.
So, kind of going on a limb to offer this, they don't want to be embarrassed in front of their leadership team. They don't want a lot of work put on their plate because they're already super busy. So it is even more so about quick and easy when it comes to the work site. And the extent that you can provide that for them and have them have confidence that they can just rely on you to do the enrollment, they're going to support it, they're going to advocate for it, but you're doing the heavy lift. And again, that also means Buddy is supporting you, right? That's why we build our platform. That's what's making the sale happen. If you don't hear the objection, right? There's always an objection you don't hear. The objection is this sounds like a lot of work. So you have to make
Right.
it sound easy.
Okay. Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and even just taking a mission-oriented approach, you kind of hinted at it, David, is um, you know, getting this generation the education on long-term care planning, getting them plans that will help them in the event of an extended care event. That is something like good planning, family culture, the habit, the awareness around long-term care, the conversations. That's something that will, you know, trickle down into future generations as well. And, that's a bit more heady and far forward thinking, but that's what we mean by we're really excited to educate so many more people in the group long-term care space because every conversation, every person we're able to reach that has ripple effects beyond just the here and now in this generation as well. So maybe not something you would pitch in an employer meeting, but something we're generally thinking about as, we're looking to reach as many people as possible about this.
Yeah, probably the biggest challenge I see, I'll give you guys a story from this week. Somebody referred me a HR person from LinkedIn. Actually, it doesn't happen that often, or like just someone I've never met before referred me a client. But they booked 15 minutes with me. We met. She was like 32 years old, young HR rep, and she said they wanted a voluntary long-term care program, right? I'm like, so why were they interested in this kind of things? And they're like a stealth company. I couldn't even find out what they did because she was like, we can't even tell you what we do. It's like I'm working with the CIA here. But we talked about what works, and the hardest thing is to get the employer funding. We've talked about that. It really is critical to bring up early on. It's really critical to put like a really like hard line in the sand. It's not going to be successful for you if you don't do employer funding, and here's why. Right? And it really comes down to participation. Nobody wants to implement a new benefit and have nobody participate in it. It creates a lot more work for HR also to try to get people to pay attention to it. So again, not expensive like we've talked about. You can obviously carve it out for whoever you want, but here's what it costs. And I actually did show Benefit Buddy, the group quick quote, right? That's in the portal. We went through some options. We talked about where their employees were located and where to site is it. We looked at the leverage and we went through the plan. And you could do that all on like a first call. It was actually booked for 15 minutes, but we actually went over an hour. We talked for quite a while, and she was super enthusiastic, but who knows whether she'll be able to communicate that message to her managers, right? There's decision makers. Um, at the end of the day, though, that's where you kind of have to begin is really engaging them, using the tools too, like the one pagers and the quick quotes, making it quick and easy and understandable. That is where you're getting the sale.
That stuff
Howard?
matters. Oh, go ahead. Yeah,
Yes,
Howard.
question. Well, continue on, but I would like a question answered. Is anybody writing group business in anything for 1099 people? I have not seen anything for real estate agents and other people who receive 1099s rather than W-2s.
Super good question. Yeah, I'm actually working with a group right now with one of our partners who actually joined us on the study group. I think it was last week. It's all a blur to me now. But we went through a live case study where they actually had, kind of a financial planning firm that had a combination of W-2 and 1099 employees. And there was one carrier, I think, out of the four that didn't include some of those 1099s, but three out of the four did. So I would say there's receptiveness. You just got to kind of communicate that to the carrier, understand their stance, their temperature, their flavor for it. And I think carriers are all ear, like the more information you give them, the more you'll be able to get kind of their support, their benefit of the doubt, right?
They want
Anything
to
to add to
also
that?
see that you're going to get the participation, right? So
Yeah.
same rules apply,
Yeah.
employer funding. As long as you can include those facts, they're going to go out of their way to try to make those folks eligible for this plan too.
Okay,
They just want
I
to
know
see
they're
20
trying to
hours.
avoid adverse selection, so that's their main worry. So, all right, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Of course. Yeah, I think the biggest pivot point for them is actively at work and actively at work more than part-time. I think that's going to be one of the biggest things. If it's a part-timer 1099 person working 5 to 10 hours a week, that probably wouldn't fly, right? But if you could say, these are just commissioned agents who are working a full-time job, actively at work 30, 40 hours a week, you're going to get a lot more favor for those folks.
Hey, Jason or Mark, we had this question the other day. Um, 20 hours a week, 17 hours a week at one company, but then they work 20 hours at another company, 1099 on both. I mean, two separate entities, two separate businesses, but is that looked at any differently? Probably, huh?
No, no, it's the same thing. So the first thing is, can we kind of have them as an eligible employee
Hmm.
for that employer?
Yeah.
So that's the first thing to check off the box. Okay. The second thing to check off the box is, are they working enough from actively work? Because that's the question they're going to get when they go through the enrollment process.
Right.
Are you actively work? Sometimes you can go down to 17 and a half, sometimes 20, sometimes 30. You just got to work with the carrier. And whatever their normal benefit eligibility is, it'll usually match.
Yep.
So if they're
That's
eligible
that's
for
kind of
other
your biggest chip.
benefits, that's a good way to actually even bring that to the table and say, yeah, they're already getting these other benefits. Can they also get the long-term care? That's almost always a shoe-in yes. They're not getting other benefits, then the carrier gets a little bit nervous, like why aren't they getting other benefits?
Agreed. That's kind of your biggest bargaining chip. And when you look at any proposal, all it says is actively at work, not actively at work at the employer mentioned herein, anything of that nature. There's generally 20 or 30 hours on the proposal, or there's actively at work, performing the normal duties of your job. Like that's really the definition we go by. And kind of like Mark said, that's your big bargaining chip for getting maybe down from 30 to 20 or down from 30 to 17 and a half is, hey, for our short-term, long-term disability and term life, it's 17 and a half hours to be benefit eligible. I think that's what the carrier thinks about most. They want to fit in with other benefits. It's not like they want to be shoehorned in and stick out in any certain way. So, yeah, it's a good question. Then we got this guy, Mark Glickman, who asked a question in the chat.
Well, actually, before we get to that, I wanted to ask Steve Kupinoff. Can I ask you a question? Sorry to put you on the spot. Remembered I saw you on the Trustmark webinar, the Enroll for Life webinar yesterday.
Yeah.
So what's your opinion of kind of where enrollment platforms need to go, given your experience with group benefits, payroll deduction versus ACH? I'm curious what your take is on that.
Well, I think that what Trustmark has there is a gem. I think it was really interesting, and I know Tom, the guy that sold his company to them, the Enroll for Life,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's something that could probably be duplicated by your system, and all that it is just a tracking system for accountability to make sure everyone has a chance to engage in the enrollment process. And as you heard Tom say, that they want to go after no's, and which just means that people are engaged and actually participating and go onto a site. So however you can do that, I mean, a system has to be built around that. And his particular system, if you noticed, had they call it IOPT, but the three options: you can buy in, you can buy up, or you can not, and not buy at all. And so what's interesting is in the psychology behind it, there's a white paper you can read that explains it, is it's almost, I shouldn't use this word, almost in a sense, kind of guilting, not, but that's really the wrong word, encouraging the person to make a decision. So either get in it, buy more than the minimum offer, or waive. But again, their goal on their system, and they've refined it because they've tried it many times, unsuccessfully self-service. This particular hybrid life LTC product is just very difficult to do, but they found a way to do it, not by so much encouraging participation, but really more just engagement.
Yeah, I think it's important if you have that opportunity. Again, you need the condition from HR, but say everyone just needs to go in and say that they've seen the coverage and decline the coverage. And you can blame the carrier because on the proposal, they'll say you have to have a certain percentage have seen the offer. It's a really easy thing to do, but just the fact that they are aware of the offer and seeing it lets you know that, okay, they've checked the box that they're not interested, move on and focus on the people that are. I think that's a
Yeah.
great tool, and one thing that we are also incorporating in our platform, Steve, to your point.
Yeah, a tracking system to see who's actually, going on the site or not. And it's a great idea. What I was thinking after I saw that, Mark, was that system combined with your, doing the webinars ahead of time, your educational process, should be a perfect combination. And I was thinking, hopefully you could incorporate these ideas into your system.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, actually, we have a few different enrollment platforms. One we've talked about in the past, which is built into the carriers specifically for long-term care. And that is, we do have the ability to add that question to like the first question is, those three options like you just described from IOPT.
Yeah.
We can do that and track everybody, make sure that everyone's completed that, or it will automatically follow up. Once they start the application, the system automatically follows up to get them to complete that question through like a magic link. So it goes right to their email. They click it.
Yeah.
They don't have to remember a login or anything. It knows who they are when they click the link.
And the only downside I saw with their system, as compared to yours, is I don't think they do a whole lot of education up front. Or
Right.
if they do, it might be a video, a small video, a short video, or some brochures or something. But I think that obviously that's pretty important. So I'm still not real familiar with what that process is, the education prior, other than one webinar that I participated in for the college you allowed me to look at. So I am curious. I don't know if we have time, but like to find out what's involved in that process. How do
This
you
is
really
Ask Me Anything, so I will show
get
you kind
people
of
educated? How
our
do you?
No
education
silly
process.
questions, and we have to do whatever you ask, right? That's the that's the purpose of
Yeah.
the study group. But I think we've had a study group a while ago on what we kind of covered during webinars, but I think it makes sense to kind of bring it back because we're always kind of refining what we do for the education as we do them for employers and get feedback and understand, what folks are saying because HR is really good about giving us feedback.
Yeah.
And I think we should do a session one of these days where we actually go through that process. But Mark, if
Yeah.
you want to show Steve what we have.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you a question, then I'm going to show you kind of or answer your question, which is ACH. What are your views on ACH versus payroll deduction?
You're asking me, right?
Yeah.
I,
Ask
I
you
would
anything.
I would much prefer to do ACH because I think at the employer level, it would be a lot easier sale. And not only that, I know you really push the employer funding, and I understand why. I understand that mentality and that strategy. But I think if you didn't have to include that, then it would be an even easier sale. So
Yeah.
that for any employer size, from whatever. And
Hmm.
but so yeah, if ACH can be done successfully, then sure. I
Yeah,
mean,
you
way to
bring up a
go.
good point. It's an easier sale for 100%, right? All voluntary, direct build, right? Really easy. But then the participation is difficult. Or it's a harder sale and the participation is easier. But
Yeah.
you kind of have one or the other. You can't really get both.
Well, Trustmark offers that
Mhm.
ACH with their
Yep.
Enroll for
Mhm.
Life platform.
Yeah, I think all the carriers now have ACH, which
Mm,
you should definitely take advantage of.
yeah.
But the question is how do you get the participation? And that's what we try to kind of plan with the end in mind.
Yeah.
So
Well,
that's where our bias is, though, is not to do a group unless we know we can get good participation, because there's a lot of ones out there that might be a better fit, is the way
yeah.
to think of
Yeah,
it.
and starting with employer funding obviously makes sense. I ended up getting a school district case once because I started with employer funding, and then they backed down. And it led to voluntary only.
Hmm.
So at least we got to
Yeah,
sell that it wasn't as successful as you
right.
could imagine. I
I'm
guess.
gonna okay, so this is Gretchen's deck. Okay, so I'll do my best because she's out today at showing you what we typically do from an education perspective, Steve. Because
Okay.
you mentioned the webinar, well, that's one piece of a lot of different
Hmm.
resources we have. So typically we're doing marketing, planning, strategy. Usually we're meeting with HR to really understand their channels and how they reach their employees. So
Hmm.
it is a consultative approach. It
I
isn't
see.
just one size fits all, but usually that's a really easy conversation to have because they know how they offer their other benefits. And what we do is we kind of plug into their channels, write the content for them, come up with like a roadmap for like what we do, what milestones we need, how
Hmm.
many emails we can get, 4 to 8 emails usually before the enrollment starts. So it really is a true planning conversation around how do we get engagement. And HR knows the answers to that already. They know whether their employees attend webinars. Sometimes they don't attend webinars. Sometimes we pre-record webinars or videos. So there's a lot we can do. We love doing videos with HR that tell their personal story. For us, it's a 2-minute Zoom. We just hit record, we interview them. It's super easy. It's so
Hmm.
powerful to hear someone talking about why this is important to pay attention to. They can use that as well in their emails, or they can use that on the landing page, right? The education page. And they see a thumbnail of their HR person uh, telling the story, not us.
Hmm.
So there's a lot you can do, but again, we really try to make it custom, but it's still low cost, low time commitment from everyone involved.
Hmm. Yeah.
And this is just some examples. This is the video that I did with one of our early groups, their HR director. She told her personal story. But
Hmm.
there's a lot of different topics that we cover, on our enrollment pages, right? We talk about LTC 101. We talk about caregiving. We talk about how do you fund professional caregiving and the importance of it. So just like Jason was talking about the webinars, we go through that also on the enrollment page. We have the FAQs, we have the calculator. So there's just quite a lot of assets that we put together into one package that fits that particular group when we do the enrollment.
Hmm.
So more here. I think Jason was talking about the webinars, and we can do a session definitely to talk about the topics. But they all tell the same story, and they lead the client through that same journey, right?
Hmm.
They have to know why they need to plan for long-term care, why it's important to fund professional caregiving, and then it's about the insurance and benefit as a mechanism to provide that funding.
Hmm.
100% of people get value out of it. A certain percentage of people find value in the benefit. And I think we all have to be realistic in this room as to who is really going to buy insurance. We all probably think everyone should buy insurance, but the reality is that only a certain percentage of the population will. Let's target those people and get them a plan. Because very few of them actually have it. The ones that would buy it don't have it, right? So that's the gap that I think we need to fill.
Hmm.
The calculators, and then just some samples of some of the emails that we send out. We try to make it fun, right? We try to make it gamified. Ask them questions in these emails, right? It's not
Hmm.
we're rolling out this new benefit. It's like, let's do a quiz. True or false? Medicare private health insurance will cover long-term care. We know the answer to that, but the employees have no idea,
Hmm.
right? They assume that. So it really is kind of coming up with like creative content that really engages with people, quick and easy, to your point, but gets them to the next step of that journey and that process. And then during the enrollment, we actually have a different series of communications about the benefit and how to enroll. And so at that point, hopefully they've made a decision about whether this is of interest to them or not. So
And then
just a
it's
lot
all
of
about
pieces.
driving people to the landing pages as well, which are a separate long-term care education playhouse in their own right.
Hmm.
Yep. And by the way, you can find this playbook, this PDF, as well as each of these pieces, which are standalone PDFs, in the Buddy System marketing section. You can download these and use these for your own
Huge.
enrollment. Okay.
Type in
So
playbook.
you
Hmm.
get all of the playbook in your hands for anything you want to do with it. So just
Hmm.
that's a kind of an overview, Steve.
Yeah, that's impressive.
Well, Mark, if you want to actually go into the buddy system, we have
Sure.
two playbooks that Gretchen has done that I think deserve a lot of promoting. Um, and these are recent additions, I believe. So just type in playbook and both of them will pop up. But we also have an employer guaranteed issue playbook that will really help you um, to understand a little bit about the process and the conversation early on as far as pre-sale goes. I'm looking for something to help me or to even to help the group a little bit understand the importance of long-term care and how to actually go from idea to execution.
Hmm.
So both
And
of
you can
those
also use this for
pieces.
brokers. So if you're a
Hmm.
BGA or you have work with
Yep.
brokers, is a great way to help them find the opportunities. So,
Yep.
and the other playbook, which is the one I shared with you, is called the group enrollment playbook. So that is literally what I downloaded,
Hmm.
just showed you. So feel free to take advantage of that inside the marketing section of the portal.
Okay.
Absolutely. So
Hmm.
do we want to get to this Mark
That's
Glickman
good.
guy's question or what? What do we
Yeah, it was
think?
actually from somebody who wrote me a private message. I didn't know if he wanted to be anonymous or if it was accidental, but
Oh, okay.
go ahead. Yeah.
Well, anonymous person, it's a good question. Um, I don't know what we would do if every one of the applications was paper applications. I think we would all lose our mind. I would say most of them tend to be electronic applications, but you did say or make mention of application via census. And for employer-funded cases, that's one of the pieces that can actually make the process easy with the right enrollment platform, being able to actually census enroll those employees who are going to be funded. So actually taking information, extracting it from the census and using that to pre-fill application questions for those funded employees. You're getting long-term care purchase for you, and your application is about 10 times easier because of it. That's a pretty compelling case to be able to make HR for how can I make this process easy.
Yeah. Yeah, and I wouldn't get too caught up if you're not as familiar with this. We'll help guide you to how to do all of the implementation pieces. But yes, we like to do everything electronic, digital. And that's because it enables a lot of the automation to work in your favor. To Steve's point, right, it allows you to kind of get them to suggest interest or to track people that may not have seen the offer yet. It allows us to automatically follow up. What Jason was referring to is when we get the census, one of the extra benefits is we have a lot of data on the employees that can be used to pre-fill the application, which means that they have to answer fewer questions. And the fewer questions that people have to answer, the more likely it is that they're going to be able to enroll very quickly and easily. Also, when it's employer funded, some carriers do not require them to even sign the application. The employer is already paying the premium, so they are automatically enrolled. They can opt out, but very few people do opt out once they're enrolled in a benefit. And if they're not paying the premium, right, they're just provided that as easily as possible. So a lot of we can do with that data, and if you do it on a paper basis, you just don't have the ability to collect that data. And it's possible to do paper applications still in this day and age. Some of the carriers will reduce your commissions if you do it. They don't want it either. Usually it's something that you do like after the fact, if like somebody like forgot to enroll and the carrier's making an exception and there's some kind of one-off manual process going on. But I would say in no cases have we ever tried to get people to enroll with paper. Even with the individual side, I think almost every carrier has an e-app, and I would never try to do a paper app, although I know there are some agents out there that still, are more comfortable with it. It's still, you get used to the e-application, you find yourself saving a lot of time. And the clients, of course, like it better too, most of the time.
Paper apps, I can't tell if those were good memories or bad memories. I just can't tell. I just remember a lot of paper.
Yeah.
Um,
With the electronic too, remember they can tell you when somebody's filled in something incorrectly. So you're getting a lot higher percentage of applications in good order. In fact, our enrollment platform will not allow you to submit it unless the data is accurate. So it will like kind of alert them that you need to fix this field before they submit it. So just think about the convenience of having that versus having to go back and forth and correcting applications. Those are the kind of scary memories that I've tried to black out as well, Jason.
For sure. That can lose you sales, and that's no joke. The every single time you have to go back and forth for something where the client thinks they're done with whatever piece of the application you're going through. Can get you 1 inch closer to unfortunately, losing their engagement, losing their interest, or exhausting them, right? I think that's why, Mark, you say a lot. I think it's just as much process as it is product because you can exhaust people out of, I was interested in this, but I'm just plain I'm just plain tired of it. I don't care anymore. That is a real life thing. How many times has that happened to you over anything, big or small, right?
Mhm.
Um, so it's a good thing to think about. Um, Mark, I have a question for you.
Mhm.
Can you explain off cycle? What is off cycle? Why long-term care off cycle? I got that question
Mhm.
in a meeting a couple of days ago, and I thought it'd be a good learning experience for everyone.
Okay. So think of on cycle as when the employer typically offers all of their core benefits. So their core benefit enrollment. A lot of times it's going to be in the fourth quarter, right? 11/1 to 1/1 effective dates. Um, Off cycle is anything that's not during the core benefit enrollment. Now, you will usually do long-term care on cycle, but you want your first enrollment to be off cycle if you can, because you want your first enrollment is really your opportunity to give people access to the education without distraction. And we all know, and HR has this is their busiest time of year, right? They're chasing people down to finish their health insurance enrollment, right? And people always miss the deadlines and they have to, like, kind of scramble for that. So you don't want to put in something new during someone's busiest time of the year. That's your key person that's going to help you get participation. So it's really important. Now, if you're doing employer funding, another benefit of that is you can enroll employer funding on cycle because you can do the education later. Even if they're getting the benefit paid for, they're not even having to sign the application. 2 months after, or a month after open enrollment, hey, let's do the education, talk about that new benefit that we provided to you. How do I sign up? You're already signed up. So,
You already own this.
you have flexibility in terms of how you do it. But when you do the education, don't do it when your key person is in their busiest time and when nobody's paying attention to it. Because guess what the results are going to be? Yeah, I'll look at that later. I don't have time for it now. Now, when you do the re-enrollments, when you do things after that first enrollment, a lot of times you'll incorporate it with the other benefits, but everyone has a good foundation of knowledge already, or we would hope. And you can do like a refresher webinar. So you still can do education, but you can do something that's not like contingent on the success of the whole program, because maybe only the new hires are attending that webinar versus the entire population.
Yep. I think doing the employer funded enrollment on cycle makes sense. And, even for voluntary buy-ups or voluntary for the employees who weren't funded, that can be a separate enrollment, right? So you can actually do all of the education, the voluntary enrollments, the buy-ups as a separate piece. And some carriers actually have technicalities, correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, where it's like they have to be two separate enrollments, but generally they're just kind of like one day, one week apart sort of deal.
Yeah. There's little nuances with every carrier in terms of their rules, but they're going to look at you and look at your benefit broker if you're working with them to determine what you need it to be. It's funny on the group side, the carriers are much more accommodating, but you have to kind of know your stuff about what works because they're following your lead, and then if it's not successful, it's on you. So I would definitely follow these best practices. It's not just something that we believe in, it is something that every long-term care focused agency has shown time and time again. This is what works.
Yeah, it's a good point. The employers who have very specific asks, they generally get what they want from the carrier because they know what they want, and the carrier is looking to make this work and make it a good experience and a familiar experience for the employer. So I think that's also kind of um, something that can make a group a good candidate if they know what they want, right? Um,
So before we cut it off here, Jason, I do want to ask you guys one ask. We started off this session by talking about the Allstate, this BuddyINS program. My ask of you is email me if you're interested in participating, because we have to determine who our initial eligible group is. And I don't want anyone to be left out if they are interested. Again, that's for long-term care, for yourself, for your employees, and potentially for your agents if you're a BGA or an upline firm. And you'll get access to probably what we consider to be the best product right now because it has that 5% compound inflation at a very affordable rates.
fully guaranteed whole life.
So I'm going to end this or maybe start to close it off with asking you anything. How's that, Jason?
Yeah, I mean, for me, send me an email if you are an agent or long-term care specialist out there who's interested in working alongside the opportunities we have with certain groups, specifically some of the higher compensated associations of doctors, dentists, attorneys. Those associations need folks to be able to reach out, make them aware of the plan, but also consult on the plan and help people through their experience. We're finding that associations really kind of need that extra touch without the employer-employee affinity. And with that touch, participation can go a really long way. So we're looking for folks who have time to dedicate to outreach, to learning the products, to consulting. And these are, of course, commissionable opportunities. So if you are interested in any of that, give me an email and I'll set up a meeting with either just myself or myself and Mark. We can talk through a little bit more about the opportunities themselves, what the expectations of the programs are. We have Dale on the line who has worked with us on several of these opportunities and has done a very, very nice job. Maybe on a separate session, because I'm sure he's working in the background right now. We can have him talk a little bit
You really
about
think
his
I'm working?
experience. Well, I had to give you the benefit of the doubt, Dale. I wasn't going
I
to just
know.
smear you in front of
I know.
everybody,
Yeah.
but
No, it's a great
What are your
opportunity.
thoughts? Yeah,
There's a lot of good things. There's groups, large groups that we work with, and having been a specialist on the team really helps out those people that want to understand long-term care 101 or how to hit the landing page or whatever it is. And then if it's professional groups, it's just a matter of contacting them at reasonable times, reaching out to them and seeing if they're interested in this program because too often they're too busy and they don't take the time. So if they reach out to us and book a meeting with us, and that helps a lot. The education piece really helps in the evaluations of this. And definitely when you talk about the employer funding, it really goes a long way versus voluntary funding, voluntary programs as far as employment. And so I enjoy it. It's fun. It can be painful sometimes because you get voicemails and you don't get callbacks and all that stuff. But that's our world we live in because they're busy in life.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And
Yeah.
yeah, Dale's worked with us on a bunch of different types of opportunities of all shapes and sizes. Has done a really good job on them. I would say, Dale, it's probably ranged for you from full long-term care consultation all the way to just instructing somebody and how to get to the self-service tools and what
Right.
are the best to use of those tools, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think every group has been different. Every person you get introduced to is different, which is kind of part of
And
the
like in the
fun.
long-term care world, you don't know who's going to actually pull the trigger.
Right.
I had a doctor that was going to pulled the trigger actually, but decided that he decided that if he needed long-term care, he was going to move back to India. So he pulled his application.
Right.
But that happens in our world, right? You never
Right.
know. And tell them the stories, find out their story, and why they're interested in looking at this and being educated about it is very important. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
And the approach becomes a lot easier in many cases when there's guaranteed issue on the table as well. I
And that
think
was
many
this
folks,
guy. This guy
yeah,
was actually not insurable, believe it or
right.
not.
Hmm.
But he would have gotten guaranteed issue on the plan, and he decided to not do it for some reason.
Yeah, well, thank you for just kind of giving your perspective and of
Yeah.
course for everything you've done with us on all of these groups. But if anybody out there is interested, and you could be a newer agent, somebody who has some time to dedicate to this and is coachable, willing to learn. I think it could be a great opportunity for many of you out there. So whether you're listening to the recording, saw the email I sent out earlier today, just shoot me an email and we can go from there, have a meeting and talk about the opportunities. But that is it. Thank you all for asking such good questions and answering some of our questions. We kind of flipped that one on its head for a couple of you. But we really appreciate your interaction taking us really all the way up to the top of the hour. And we're blessed to have people to show up and have that happen. So thank you, everyone. We're here. We're standing by for any other questions you have. Be well, and we will talk to you this time next week. Mark and I will be back from Medicare, and so we won't even miss you. Have a good one, everyone.